Welcome to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge, the podcast where Christine says fear, questions everything, and takes bold action. Christine Spratley is a former professional boxer, nanny, and 29-plus year corporate warrior turned founder of HBIC Advisors, where she is a public speaker and coach. She's been saying fear her whole life, many times without even realizing it. So tune in, spread the word, and get ready, because this isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, and welcome to Fuck Fear with Christine Spratley, living like a head bitch in charge. And I know that some of you may be going, well, why do I care about fulfillment? I mean, yeah, it's something to have, right, Joe? It's like we all want to be fulfilled someday, right? We all want to live fulfilling lives. It seems pretty almost theoretical in nature. And I know that I remember, especially when I was working in corporate and just always focused on succeeding, because that was a big deal for me, was I was like, well, yeah, I want to do what I want someday, but, you know, you don't just follow your passion. That's just, I kind of felt like that was like buying a surfboard and, checking out. And when I talk about fulfillment, ladies, I'm talking about something more than just yes, it is finding your passion, but it is, are you fulfilled? Are you seriously happy in what's going on in your life? And the reason why I'm having this kind of conversation with you today is because I have noticed a few things recently. I kind of pay attention to what's going on in my life, but also the people that I meet and the conversations that I have. And also the things that come across in my LinkedIn feed or other social media or things that I read. And it has been on a couple things. First of all, fulfillment. Obviously, I coach on that, both professional fulfillment, personal fulfillment. And this podcast is about that. And it's really trying to help people that I coach and women that I speak with and do speaking engagements on go, okay, well, what would make you fulfilled? But I wanted to talk about why it's so important. And then I'm going to talk about why it's important, kind of some facts behind that. And then I'm going to walk into, in today's session, it's going to be a little bit more about the things that I've noticed and I've had to ask myself about to kind of check in whether or not I'm fulfilled. And I've actually got some pretty interesting assignments that I give people, but also just some gut checks that we can do today. So the first one, why the hell should we care? Well, it's not, and I was talking with Joe before, it's funny because on LinkedIn, there's been this, if you've noticed in the past year and a half, if you've been on LinkedIn, there's been a move switch to where there's people more talking about what's going on in their lives, people talking about emotional intelligence, but doing it more so without the technical terms and just sharing their story. I would say living out loud more than living behind their company brand or just the technical aspects of working. And one of the things that's really, I believe, and I said, okay, well, Christine, do you think or do you know? I always say that, do you think or do you know? And I learned that from a Colin Paul speech when I was at EY. He was our in-session keynote speaker one time, and he would talk about how people would come in and he'd be like, do you think or do you know? And I know as I say that, Jason is one of my old managers at Deloitte is rolling over just going, oh my God, I don't ever want to hear that phrase again. Although he did tell me he now uses it with people he manages. So do you think or do you know, Christine? And that's a good check for me. And it doesn't mean I'm right or I'm wrong. It just says, well, where'd this come about? Like, how much do you know about it? So I always believed that highly fulfilled people, whether it be whatever fulfills them, deliver on profit, revenue, and margin. I just believed that. So I started looking into that. And there's a Gallup poll, not poll, but this is where I got my sources. Low engagement teams, okay, suffer about 18 to 40% more turnover than high engagement teams. And which obviously we all know what this means. More turnover means lower consistency, higher inefficiencies, and typically more cost and less margin. And why that? So when you think about fulfilled people and fulfilled teams and how you see people show up at work, when they're not fulfilled, they're typically either staying in miserable, which makes typically good people leave, or they're leaving, right? If they're miserable and they're not fulfilled, they're leaving to go find whatever fulfills them. But if you think about that, that's a percentage that's really, really high. And then McKinsey did a study, and this was interesting, is that the top quintile for executive leader level gender diversity are 21% more likely to beat peers on margin and more likely to create superior economic profit. And I know we're not supposed to talk about DEI or diversity or anything but one of the things I'm talking to women about is being fulfilled. And when you're fulfilled, okay, and you're included, because fulfillment means for me to be included in the levels in the company that I feel I want to and I'm qualified for. And when I'm included in those, as a female, when we are included, we are more likely to create superior economic profit. So I don't know of very many women that want to be excluded and are happy. I'll just put it that way. And so when you're fulfilled and you're happy and you're included, it's 27 more likely to create superior economic profit. So don't tell me that doesn't matter. And then we've got job fulfillment spills over into life satisfaction and relationship quality. And while this was interesting, this was a ResearchGate did a study, and they studied basically the links in between and we all have done this, taken a bad day home, we've taken a bad day home from work and we're drained, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this and go, how much do we take of a bad home day to work? And again, it's funny to me how people want to believe that they can just leave it at the door. And we can for a while, but and maybe we leave it at the door when we walk in, we put the smile on and all this other stuff. But think about the energy that we are keeping to keep that down. And so it just really matters. So I had this podcast episode early on, and it was about emotional intelligence. And one of the things that fulfillment, there's a study by ResearchGate, again, that shows that fulfillment fosters emotional intelligence. And everybody knows that emotional intelligence is something that everybody wants. It's a hot commodity in business. But if we're not in tune with what's going on, if we're denying, it's kind of like, how do you have emotional intelligence at home and shut down this part of the circuit board, just all the time? And you've heard me talk about this, about how I was very concerned about my creativity level, especially when I was going through my coaching training. I remember sitting going, they would say, be curious. And I'd be like, I ain't curious. Like, I don't even know. Like, I'm not curious. They'd be like, well, come up, be curious about who you're coaching, ask the curious question. That's how you ask the questions. And I was like, and it was really scary to me. And again, as I started to work on being curious in my own life and really pulling back what I didn't want to look at, and I said, okay, I'm going to look at this shit. And I got more and more curious without judgment of it. And I just let it happen and said, okay, what is this? Do I think or do I know? What is this? I began to have all sorts of creativity and all sorts of curiosity. It's kind of like when you pull the thread and it just goes woo, and it opens the floodgate almost. You know what I mean, Joe?
Yeah.
And so one of the things, and I've also brought this up before about how the cost of toughing things out and the increase in heart disease, especially in women. The study showed that there's an increase in early death rate, and then the cancer mortality rate goes up with high suppressions of emotional suppression. So, but one of the best things that I've seen, women in fulfillment driven outperformance. And a Gallup study showed that women managers create higher engagement on 87% of their metrics when they feel more engaged themselves, which then another part of that study shows that those engaged teams then inherit about a 23% profit lift. Think about that. You're happier, you're more engaged, I'm more engaged because I'm fulfilled. And again, we can define fulfillment how you want to define it. But the output for me is I'm going in. But it's not I'm going in because I have to go in, or it's not I'm engaging because I have to engage. It is because I am learning. It's like all cylinders go, full thrust throttle, or I'm screwing this up so bad today, guys. But you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, when the floodgates are open, we are there, we are present, we are learning, we are engaging. We are 87% more likely to have higher engagement with our teams and with others, which then renders a 23% profit lift. And I just, those are just business stuff, right? But if we take that and you go, all right, if you had more engagement at home, what benefits do you think that would have? Not just to you, but to your home life. And I want to sit and I want to talk about those are reasons why, okay? Let alone to be happy. If that's not good enough for you, these are some other reasons. But the other part of this that I've been realizing and that I had to go through was I knew a lot of this. And I still wasn't going after my fulfillment. So what I did, and what I do a lot with people, or I encourage people to do, is I say, list all the reasons I can't. What are they? And not the reasons, but the I can't. For me, it was, I can't leave my job. I can't get a job in a different industry. I can't, obviously make less money. I can't do certain things. And there was this whole long list. And then I looked at, well, why? Do you think, or do you know why? So take a moment and go, what are 3 I can'ts? And you know what they are. What are you going, I can't. I'd really like to, but I can't. And it could be something big, or it could be something small. It could be something, let's say, non-work. Let's say I can't have this discussion with my husband. Okay. I can't have this discussion with my kids. I can't have this discussion with my mom. I can't have this discussion with my girlfriend or my dad or my brother. I can't. I can't say this. I can't think this. What are your I can'ts? Why? And I went through that and I made this list. And there was this. And then the next thing I did was I went through and I started looking at, well, why? Do you think, or do you know? An example recently was a woman that I was talking with was saying, well, I can't do that. I can't go after what I want. I can't get a job that I want. And I said, okay, well, why? And she said, well, it's going to be less money, and I want to retire by this time. I said, so, okay. And I said, well, obviously you've looked at jobs that are like this, right? And she's like, well, no. And I said, well, why don't we start there? Why don't you start looking there? And also I said, where'd you come up with this retirement thing? Which was a great retirement. I'm not telling you to change your retirement, but let's look at where that came from. And it was, well, I decided based on these certain things that I wanted to be here by this time of my life. And I said, okay, so what's, that's fine. But first of all, let's go see, one, if a job that you actually want to do is out there. And two, can it pay the wage that you want to meet your retirement? And if it doesn't, what's the gap? And what was interesting was the very first thing I said was, okay, so have you talked to your financial planner about this? About, hey, what do we have to do so I can maybe make a little less, but get there just on time? Or, how long is it going to take? And none of that had been done. And that's where, to me, the boogeyman gets bigger. I can't. I stop it. I can't. But I haven't looked. I haven't done the research. I haven't even opened the door to look. I can't have that conversation with my husband. There was a post on LinkedIn from a woman, and I should have it, and I don't, but I will find it by the time this airs. And it was about, if you basically speaking up, you won't speak up in public out loud with voice if you don't speak up in the bedroom. And what was interesting about this is what I really realized about myself, is that I was pretty fierce in front of clients in certain aspects of corporate, but then I was very meek in other aspects, because in my home life, I had shut down so much of my conversation about what I really wanted. And the bedroom to me is just the term she used, but to me, it's my whole personal life, my whole fulfillment there, what I really wanted to do. And so it was like, okay, well, I need to give voice to that. And we had the conversation the other day on one of our episodes about, you can't read my mind, right? And I can punish you, Joe, but you can't read my mind. And I'm punishing you for not, and I think it was more around managing up and managing down, but it's more about the communication of what I want. And then I was sitting there and we started talking, because I was in a session, not session, but in a group with my friends. And we were talking about, well, why is it so hard? For one, for us to look. And then two, for us to speak up and to say what we want, us to look, us to find out, and then to speak up. And we had this wide-ranging discussion about it. And the discussion was included everything from, one, me just holding it in and not taking the ownership and the responsibility, conflict, avoidance, this or that. And then all the way to, hey, we know it's not going to be received well. There's been hints being dropped. And I was trying to figure out how to convey that, because I think that is, for women, one of the things that we've really started to do is we read the rooms, right? And if the room is giving us the unspoken signal that it is not going to be well received, whether it's the boardroom, whether it's the coffee shop, whether it's the bedroom, and their little hints dropped, right? And we're less likely, because we feel like there's more at risk. And of all comedians, Bill Burr, who I don't know if you've watched his stuff, but he's...
Yeah, I'm a fan. I love Bill Burr.
Okay. All right. Well, I haven't always been a fan. I've liked some of his stuff, but I've found some of his stuff, his older stuff, to really hard to watch. But I don't know. Have you noticed, this is a good, since you're a fan, have you noticed some of his new stuff?
Yeah.
Changed. Very, very changed.
Yeah, especially his newest one, right? He was talking about, I thought it was a really interesting bit. He was talking about his relationship with his wife, and how he's just like basically like a curmudgeon. And she'd be like, you want to go to a restaurant? But she'd ask in a way like she was like like timid, like he was going to get so mad. And he's like, because I did. I'd be like, I work all the time. I don't want to go to a restaurant. And he's like, so I'm just going to start saying yes a little bit more. And then basically he told the story, and she was so appreciative that
loving.
She went, yay.
And she went, yay. And then what'd she do? She went over and she gave him a kiss. And what happened to him? He had this feeling of, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. Maybe I should just be nice. But what was interesting though is that is, and if there's a man out there listening, watch this, not just in your relationship, but watch this in your work environment. How do people react to preempt what they don't want to hear? Meaning, in Bill's example, his reaction was, oh, I work 70 hours a year, but I'm home for an hour, blah, 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 blah. And it was just this overwhelming, hostile reaction. So his wife would be like tiptoeing around just to, and so it's like, again, we don't want to come into a hostile environment and ask, especially at work, because we have a lot to lose. If you think about the percentages of managers that are men, so when we're asking or representing in an environment that is, it's like, okay, there's not a lot of us here at this level. Oh my God, we gotta make sure we're approaching it right. But again, if you're a man, watch your environments. How are people responding to, or how are you responding? And women, same thing. How are we responding? But what environment shut us down?
Christine Spratley doesn't hide her life. She's real about it, warts and all. After leaving 29 plus years in corporate, she founded HBIC Advisors with one mission: be a fierce ally for women to stop waiting for permission to live boldly. If you want your audience to unapologetically run until apprehended toward fulfillment, Christine is your next podcast guest. Warning: may cause spontaneous HBIC badassery. Book her now at ChristineSpratley.com.
There's a lot in relationships, and not all of them, but in a lot of them that I've had conversations with where women have said, okay, I've had to really have a conversation with my husband about me being unfulfilled. And there's this double speak that happens. Oh, I love you. I'm so proud of you. I'm so blah, 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 blah. But there's comments like, yeah, I could be a kept man. I like being a kept man. Or this was one I've heard in my conversations where the woman who is likely the breadwinner, or not the breadwinner, but the majority of the higher earner, let's just call it that. And the husband will go, well, we can live on less. It's like, whoa, wait. Why don't you go make more? I mean, think about that. I would like to do something else. I have been providing an environment in which I enjoy too, but now I want to do something else. And your response is, well, that's fine. I'm not going to pick up more. I'm not going to pick up the margin, or I'm not going to pick up the gap. And there's not a discussion of, well, all right, let's see if I can pick up the gap. But it's little things like that where, and I've talked to some really high performing women that would just like to do something less. And they don't want to have the conversation because everything in their life is there and set. And then they feel guilty for wanting everything to be set. The kids are in a good school, this and that, and this and that. And it's like, but have the conversation with your spouse. Well, can you pick up this? Can you pick up more? Can you make more? Or maybe it's not income. Maybe it's, hey, can you do this with the kids? Like not just occasionally once a quarter. Like I need you every day in here with the kids. Can you, and even I've had women that do take care of the kids, work, and then take care of parents or plan for family events that include parents and relatives. It's like, hey, I need some help here. And not help, I need it to be incorporated into this. But that's one of the reasons that's really hard to have those conversations. And I realize that, women. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the conversations and you don't ask, you may or may not get. But you don't know until you ask and have that conversation. And I'll tell you, for me, I started to have the conversation, and it unfortunately led to a lot of things going, oh, yeah, everything's great. And it wasn't. There was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of different things happening. And so I moved on because my fulfillment was very important to myself, and I couldn't continue doing what I was doing. And I think for a lot of women, that is so scary. And I will tell you that not every woman who is asked or been unfulfilled and had that conversation, whether it be at work or be in their personal life, has had to leave their job, has had to leave their marriage. Some of us have and some of us haven't. And so, but do you think or do you know, just what are the three things? What were those three things? Why can't you have that? And what if you were able to have that conversation and it did turn out okay? The other thing that I've learned is a lot of times I preempt based on the fact that I don't have enough belief in myself. And Joe, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but like, where you don't take a risk because you don't think you can withstand it if it doesn't work out. And I'm not talking, debits and credits. I'm talking, risk of vulnerability. And that's what Bill Burr was talking about in his thing. I know I'm not putting words in his mouth as far as he never used the word vulnerability. Okay. But that is a very vulnerable moment for his wife to have that conversation, to do that. And so it's one of those things. It's like, have you ever said, oh, I'm not going to be vulnerable here because the risk is too high? So that's what it comes down to. But I always wonder, is the risk greater by not saying anything? And I just went through, the health risks and things like that, but just the happiness risk. And the other thing that I've also learned is that we teach others around us, whether they're our children, whether they're our friends, whether they're our coworkers. People learn. We had that conversation the other day about, the 5 people, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with and things like that. So if we're not taking the risk to be truly vulnerable, and I'm not bashing anybody for, there's a lot of risk out there that we don't want to take, but why can't you have those conversations? Why can't you why can't you put that down on paper? What you really, really want, what is going to make you fulfilled? Why can't you write, I don't want this job? And for me, it was, on the surface, it was, well, the kids are, the mortgage, this, that, and the other. And I thought, well, we'd have to downsize or this, that, or the other. And turns out, I don't think we would have had to because the money was there. But we did end up separating, and I have a lot less. I make a lot less and I have a lot less, but I am a hell of a lot happier. Not all the time. It's up and down. But I am a hell of a lot more at peace with myself. And I'm doing. And I will tell you, I remember at work, it was just a dread to say. I think sometimes you've heard me talk about this. I was just like, there was nothing worse than end of quarter. Or actually, it was every 4 weeks. We would just get the numbers. And you'd be like, where are your numbers at? Where are your numbers at? And now I will call people, I will do things, because I love what I do, and I am fulfilled, and I feel like I have value in what I do. But I just want you to go, what are those things that I can't? And why can I not do that? Really, why? Is it not allowed? Is it immoral, illegal? Why? Why? And I'd even question, you one step further and say, well, what about that environment is that you're in right now that tells you can't even ask? You can't even bring it up. And then if you can bring it up, go find out. There are ways to find out if what you want to do is possible. But you're never going to know if you can fly unless you jump. It's funny. I've said this before. My coach, Lynn, would always tell me it's not a leap of faith until you leave the ground and you jump and you leap into that other part of your life. So I just really think that being fulfilled is not about being selfish. It's not about just being self-centered and it's all about me. It's all about living to the most of who you are and who you can be. And when I'm not have that in my sights, or I'm not leading towards that, then I'm not living to the most. And when I'm not living to the most, I'm not able to give to the most. I am giving from a level of deficiency, a level of fear, a level of, okay, I've got to protect. And I just really, that shows up all the time in work and at home. And I'm not saying everything's going to be easy peasy, but we don't get a do-over on this. We don't get a do-over. Like, there's nowhere to catch yesterday's bus. So I need to catch mine today, And I'll tell you, as someone who's 54, I don't get 34 back. I don't get to go back there. Not that I do differently, but if you're listening to this and you're young, don't wait. Ask the questions now. Question and go get. Because like I said before, these from business, it makes sense. But also, if it makes sense in business, it's going to make sense in personal life. If you've got a 23% lift in profit, and these are with people you don't care about and you don't love, and your engagement is more, like your energy is more and it's better, you're going to be like Bill Burr and go like, Think about that amount of goodness, whatever you want to call it, into your personal relationships. And yeah, it may take you a while to get there because there's that change and there's that transition. And there are going to be people that are like, whoa, we don't like this. That are going to have to really seriously look at why they don't want you to be fulfilled. Because I think that's the better way to look at it, is why don't you want me to be fulfilled? So, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, what are the 3 things that you can't about your fulfillment? You can't do this. You can't do that. It's not time. I can't. And then, how do you know you can't? What have you done to look to see how far you can? And is your happiness worth it? And ultimately, is the happiness of others worth it? So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, Tubbs.
Thanks for tuning in to Fear with Christine Spratley, living like a head in charge. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, tell her what topics you want to hear, and share this episode with someone who could use a pantry full of boldness in their life. Remember, life isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell. So show up, take action, and keep saying fear.